This might be a controversial topic for some reason, because as we all know, there is no such thing as tribalism in pro wrestling, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to take this as such. But the reality is, I have a lot of praise to give Triple H. And it's not just because yesterday's episode of WWE Raw was flawless, but there is a fundamental thing that Triple H does that I think completely raises the bar in professional wrestling. Now, if you're not into this level of storytelling, that is completely fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with people who disagree with my take here. But I want to preface this by saying, when I watch television, I am looking for a reason to keep watching a show. There has been tons and tons of shows on Netflix or HBO Max or Amazon Prime, and I watch the first 2 seasons. I get to the 3rd season, it kind of falls off. Then the 4th season comes out, and then it's just completely dead to me. I don't care. I lose interest. And Triple H has done something in the last few years that has effectively kept me watching every single week. And that really comes down to this ideology of long-term storytelling. Now, I've talked about this in a video before where I said long-term storytelling could be problematic because for some people, maybe they don't have the attention span or the time, and that is completely fine. I get that. But I've noticed something about Triple H's booking that completely puts him above everyone else, in my opinion. And that is the fact that Triple H has an idea of a beginning, middle, and end. Now, sometimes I think wrestling fans don't realize it, but you do really have to let things play out under the Triple H era of professional wrestling. Vince McMahon was a terrible creative in his later years because the fact is, Vince McMahon was constantly changing his mind on what he wanted the storyline to be. So there would always be holes and flaws in the stories that he was telling, to the point where it just like legitimately didn't make sense. Now, I'm not going to act like Vince McMahon was absolutely terrible, but there was a reason why AEW started off very hot, and that's because AEW was giving us good creative at a time where Vince McMahon didn't really have his foot on the gas pedal. Vince McMahon was on cruise control every single week. And being on cruise control in the television business, I think, is a terrible thing, because at the end of the day, you have to produce compelling content that keep people coming back. Now, we know that the WWE brand is stronger than ever. It is truly hotter than ever. The numbers show that WWE is doing some incredible things right now, and that is largely due to TKO. And when I see Triple H being the head honcho for WWE Creative, I'm thinking, how is the product so hot? The audience has changed, my friends. The audience that WWE has these days, it's not the same audience that WWE had 10 years ago. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that WWE is storyline first. And WWE has always been storyline first, but I feel like with Triple H, it is much more prominent than ever. We watched WWE Raw last night, and literally every single thing that happened on TV progressed the storyline in some way. To the point where now there are multiple stories on Raw and SmackDown that I watch, and in order for me to see what happens next, I have to watch the next week episode. That is WWE being in the middle of the storyline vision, because Triple H has a beginning, middle, and end. And the reality is, sometimes the middle drags out a little bit, but that's how Triple H is effectively keeping you watching every single week. Some people don't like that. Some people love instant gratification. I'm not one of those people in this world where I need instant gratification. I'm totally okay with waiting another week. So I went from being a guy who doesn't want to watch 3-hour Raws. I was miserable watching 3-hour Raws. And now it's to the point where there's so many good storylines being effectively told each week that I pretty much need Raw to be 3 hours long. And I think that makes it really dope, in my opinion, because there's a lot of talent that I want to see utilized. And I've always been a big believer that not every storyline needs to be for a title belt. And I think that's actually Triple H's biggest strength. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Triple H is perfect, because he's not. There are some things that could be changed. But for the most part, everything that is happening on TV that they're presenting on TV has a purpose, and there is a vision as to how it's going to get to the finish line. Perfect example of this is LA Knight. For a long time, people thought WWE was going to bury LA Knight. They knew they were in the middle of something with LA Knight, but they had so much other stuff going on that they're not just going to give you the instant gratification for LA Knight. So what did they do? They dragged it out. They made you wait a little bit. He's on TV, he's doing some stuff, and it all has a purpose. But the purpose was to eventually lead him to the US Championship, which he beat the hometown hero, Logan Paul, at SummerSlam. Another good example of this is Chad Gable. Some people will argue tooth and nail that Chad Gable should have beat Gunther for the IC title, because that's what the storyline was entailing. But then it eventually led to the heel turn of Chad Gable. And then that heel turn for Chad Gable ultimately led to a feud with the Wyatt Six. Guys, it's the middle of the storyline. Triple H has a plan for Chad Gable. And more than likely, Chad Gable will be in the Intercontinental title picture. So the thing is, if you want to see Chad Gable eventually get to that point, you have to watch Chad Gable have highs and lows. You're going to see him go up and see him go down. You're going to see him win. You're going to see him lose. But it's not just the wins and losses that are happening. There's storyline elements being added to it that justify why he's losing or why he's winning. So now you have Chad Gable and American Made feuding against the Wyatt Six. But there's more reasons to keep watching. I love that about Triple H booking. I do. I love the fact that not everything is, hey, let's just rush to the finish line. Braun Breaker beat Sami Zayn. That was a really fast told storyline. So it's not a slow burn for absolutely everything. But Triple H didn't give it to Braun Breaker on his first attempt. They gave it to him at the Stadium show. So what I'm realizing with Triple H's booking, and the reason why Triple H is the booker of the year, is because he is effectively better at planning the long-term vision. You see what's happening with the Bloodline. You see what's happening with the Judgment Day. People are forgetting that seeds were planted a year and a half ago for both of those storylines. And then along the way, WWE had to detour and they had to change some things a little bit here and there, but they always get back on track. So yeah, I mean, if you guys don't like that type of wrestling style, that's completely fine. If you guys don't like that level of creative, that's totally cool. I understand why some people don't. I truly do. But I do want to say that for me personally, Triple H is the booker of the year, might be booker of the century, might be the greatest booker of all time, because he is effectively keeping me interested in watching the WWE product. There hasn't been a time period under Triple H where I'm just not interested. I'm always interested in knowing what's going to happen. And that's because the little things matter. And if the little things matter, you're going to see more little things happen. And if you're not paying attention to those little things that happen, you're missing out. And therefore, it makes it more important to keep watching. And I get it. Patience is a virtue. Not everybody has patience. That's completely fine. But that's how I see it. And that's why Triple H is the booker of the year. Nobody's going to be able to top him. It's not about the having one big storyline. It's about having a fundamental change to your shows, beginning, middle, and end. Everything's got to feel important. And the big word that I constantly talk about is consistency. And there's just simply nobody better at being consistent than Triple H.